start training ahead of this year's World Championships in Tokyo. But we do have an Olympian in the field in Olivia Lundman.
That's right, Adam. Olivia Lundman paired up with Dunphy in a new event at the Olympic Games in race walking, the mixed marathon relay for race walkers, 2 walkers, man and woman, splitting up the distance 4 ways in a marathon. I thought it went rather well. It seems to be a trend in a lot of different sports, these mixed relays, and this is the offering that race walking has come up with.
And the duo of Dunphy and Lundman finished 20th in Paris with a time of 3:04:57.
Conditions this morning, Adam, absolutely perfect for outdoor endurance sports. Current temperature, you saw that on our opening graphic. It said it's 10. I think it's just a touch warmer than that, actually. It's about, I would say it's 12, between 12 and 15 degrees Celsius. Sun just rising here in the nation's capital area. And athletes assembling on the home straightaway. 2 different distances on offer. 10,000 meters for the U20 competitors. 20,000 meters for the seniors. And Adam, we will explain the nuances of race walking. There's not a lot of them, but there are some technicalities we will go over and some nuances as they get rolling here in these 2 races.
So there will be 3 races going simultaneously. 10,000 meters for the U20s. Just 1 athlete there. That'll be Lowell Soames out of BC. And then the women's and men's 20,000 meters. The athletes going through some final preparations now. There will be 5 athletes in the men's 20,000 meters, 2 in the women's 20,000.
First event this morning is race walk for both senior athletes will be contesting the 20,000 meter race walk. Athletes is going to be 20 will contest the half distance.
Stadium PA announcer Javier Clavello going over some details with the assembled folks. Nice to see a bit of a crowd here for the race walk.
Let's keep the field here for the race walk event this morning.
Officials going over a few things with the athletes. You see one official holding those paddles. Now, those paddles are just cautions. They're not official warnings. We'll get into that in a second. Well, Soames will have hip 1. He's the lone competitor in the U20 ranks. Olivia Lundman will be wearing hip 2. Rosalie Drapeau will have hip 3. Drapeau was the national champion in the 20 kilometers last year. And Enrico Ranella from the Etobicoke Huskies Striders will have hip 4. Ricky Nepomuceno will have hip 5. He's out of Ontario. Owen Sullivan from the Toronto Race Walkers will have hip 6. Dmitry Babenko, very accomplished Masters athlete, will be wearing hip 7. And hip 8 belongs to Tyler Wilson. Wilson, the 20K champ a year ago. Those paddles that the official is holding will indicate, if they are shown to an athlete, that their form is slipping a little bit. It doesn't count as an official warning. Athletes will know if they get a warning because it will be posted up on the board. We'll keep tabs on who is accumulating warnings as the races go on. So that sideways triangle indicates bending. So in race walk, the lead leg has to be straight when it makes contact with the ground. The other paddle has a squiggly line on it, and that indicates lifting, which means that the athlete is close to having both their feet off the ground. In race walk, 1 foot always needs to be in contact with the ground. And we are underway on day 4 here at the 2025 Canadian Track and Field Championships presented by Bell. The race walks kicking off day 4.
And Adam, on that shot at the start line, back in the background, just like in hockey, in race walking, we have a penalty box, and you saw some cones on the home straightaway. Thank you for going over those nuances of the race walking form. If there are, how many warnings is it? Is it 3 warnings and then penalty box time?
3 warnings, then a trip to the penalty box, and the time in the penalty box depends on the length of the race. So for Lowell Soames, he's racing 10,000 meters, so he would be in the box for a minute, whereas the other competitors who are racing 20,000 meters would spend 2 minutes in the box. And then if you pick up another warning after spending time in the box, that is a disqualification.
Yeah, it gets kind of ruthless after that time in the box. So once you come back out after that minute or 2 minutes, depending on the distance, you really need to focus on the form. And now coming down the home straightaway, we see Soames and Wilson. And really with here, Adam, looking head on, you see the two, what I call sort of, you know far more about this than I do, but they're kind of the classic race walking form. Soames using a lot of upper body rotation and hip movement. Wilson much more straight up and down.
Yeah, Soames really working the hips. And here is the Olympian Lundman, another athlete who really uses that hip swing. Owen Sullivan tucked in behind her. It will be 25 laps around the track for Soames, 50 for the rest of this field.
Well, I hope they have good counters, Adam, at the at the finish line. We can just sort of peek around from where our commentary position is, and there are quite a few officials huddled around the finish line area. They'll be keeping track of the laps. These two events, the longest events of the national championships. It's worth noting that several years ago, Athletics Canada decided to move the 10,000 meter championship on the track, as well as the senior 10,000 meter race walk championships, as a separate event, and that has been hosted by the Pacific Distance Carnival in British Columbia for a number of years, and then this year moved to the Guelph Inferno meet, which we saw on athleticscanada.tv. Adam, you and Kate were on the commentary for that. I was doing the live announcing in the stadium at Alumni Stadium in Guelph, Ontario, and got to see Evan Dunphy win another Canadian championships in that 10,000 meter race walk.
And Lundman disqualified in that event, so looking for some redemption here in Ottawa, as she is coming up to the 800 meter mark. 48 laps left to go for the Paris Olympian. Benko coming through 800 meters. His name all over the Canadian Masters record book. I lost count, so I had to Control F to search. And his name comes up 27 times.
Wow. That's impressive.
That's over different distances and at different age categories.
Noting the records in the 20-kilometer senior race walk, although it's listed as road. I'm wondering if this sometimes there might a blurring of the lines here, Adam, in terms of the record, whether it was done on the road or the track. Canadian record held by Tim Barrett, 1:22:27. Of course, Barrett, you and I know this. He is the statisticians in race walking and generally in track and field. If you want a question about stats in track and field or race walking in particular, send it to Tim. The championship record set by 2023, and he's out on the track right now. Tyler Wilson, 1:37:21. So again, that is in the 20-kilometer race. On the women's side in the 20K, the absolute Canadian record held by the great Rachel Seaman. That was set in 2010, 1:38:48, and the championship record set by Londman in 2023.
See the water table set up in lane 4 down the home straightaway. When you get to international competitions, the water table can best be described as organized chaos. You have so many countries and so many athletes swinging through, and lots of times you'll see athletes helping each other out. If they're on the outside, someone who's on the inside will pass their table, hand them the bottle, and then they'll take a drink and they'll go on their way. They'll toss the bottle, and then someone from their table will scamper to collect it. It's quite a sight.
This event, the 10,000 meters completed in a time where sport nutrition may not be that important, but the 20,000 or 20K race walk here, when you're in an event that lasts well over an hour, here we're going to be north of an hour and a half, sport nutrition starts to become very important. Your body only has about 2 hours of glucose stores in it. So, and if you're going at the effort that these race walkers or a runner or any endurance sports athlete is going at, you don't want to get up against that limit. So you will need to take some form of sport nutrition, particularly in the form of glucose, in to keep the energy stores up over the duration of the effort. And in addition to that water table, they have each athlete is allowed to put their own sports beverage on that table, and they can pick it up and utilize it as they wish. But you're right, Adam, at those big international championships, Olympic Games, World Championships, they have all those cabanas set along for the teams along the side of the road. And when the pack comes through, it is somewhat chaotic with walkers trying to get to their particular team location and get their specific bottle.
If you ever attend an international race walk competition and you have the ability to stand and watch near the table, I highly recommend it because it is quite something. Left side of the screen, Olivia Lundman leading the women's race. On the right side, Tyler Wilson, 20K champ a year ago. He is coming off a second place performance at the NAIA Championships in Indiana. That was a 5,000-meter race. Wilson part of that very strong UBC team, coached by Evan Dunphy. Lundman a member of that team as well.
I'm looking at Wilson's form, Adam, and he utilizes a similar technique to Evan Dunphy, his coach, more upright in terms of his walking position, and a lot of utilization of the upper body to drive the body forward with a little bit of a forward lean on the torso.
There is Solms on the right side of the screen, lone athlete in the U20 race. And he is coming up, I believe this is going to be 2,400 meters for Solms. So he is just about a quarter of the way through his race. There is the women's leader, Olivia Lundman. She is on lap 6.
Yeah, that was unfortunate for Lundman at the Inferno. She went into the penalty box. I saw that. Again, you and Kate were on the commentary, and I visually saw her go into the penalty box at Alumni Stadium in that 10,000-meter championship. She came out and did a few more laps and then was out of the race after that. So it does get very ruthless with the officiating once you've spent time in the penalty box. And sadly for her, her race was over at that point. So as you had said, Adam, a bit of redemption here. Double the distance in the 20K for Lundman.
The athletes will only be shown the paddles for cautions. Those aren't official warnings. It's 3 warnings that gets you put in the penalty box, and a 4th warning results in disqualification. Now, the reason for that is that officials can only give 1 warning per competitor. So you don't know, as a racer, who gave you a warning, and that way the officials and the racers, or I should say the racers, don't relax their form in front of that one official, knowing that they can't give them another warning.
Well, I'm assuming that the reasoning for that, Adam, is to inject some form of neutrality into the judging of the form. The officials are spread out on the track. We can't see them. We're not seeing them on the camera, but you will periodically see in your screen someone in white scrutinizing the athletes as they go on by. I think this penalty box, sort of the way they've arrived at the ruling now, I think is much better. I mean, I think back to those days previous to the utilization of the penalty box, and we'd see these crazy scenes of, in World Championships or Olympic Games, walkers and athletes being disqualified in the final, couple hundred meters of the race, and it would take away completely from the theater of it all.
Tyler Wilson taking in some water or some other liquid. Back in my day, it was all water, but of course, it was not an elite level athlete, so they might have something a little more advanced in those bottles.
Well, there's a whole range of sports nutrition beverages that athletes are using. Of course, the most basic would be Gatorade, but it is a worldwide, multi-billion-dollar business of sport nutrition. The top of the science now is these new compounds that were created by the commercial brand is Morton, and what they have utilized in the Morton product, and I think that copyright has run out for them, but it's a compound that allows the passage of more glucose through the membrane of the stomach. So you can superload, if you will, the body with glucose in training or in a race situation. And this is allowed for more carbohydrates to get into the body. And you certainly see this now in perhaps not an event of this duration, about an hour and a half plus, but certainly in marathon types of competitions and in bike racing where in a typical Tour de France stage, it's 4 hours, 5 hours of racing. Morton, one of the big sponsors of a couple of the World Tour trade teams in professional cycling. So just basic Gatorade is where it all started, but it's advanced way beyond that in terms of the sport nutrition.
Olivia Lundman leading the women's race. Moving along well, although on that last lap she did see a paddle. Solms a look at his watch. His goal is just to stay clean and cross the line. He is the lone competitor in the U20 men's race. No U20 women competing here in Ottawa.
Well, one thing I've noted, Adam, watching the top race walkers, including Evan Dunphy, race on the road, race on the track, is they have this metronome-like pace. I remember back to that race of Evan Dunphy's at Alumni Stadium in the Canadian 10,000 meter championship. He was within a tenth of a second or two each lap, and he was just knocking them out every lap, all 25, within a couple of tenths of a second of one another, until he got to the last lap, and then it was a big push to the finish line.
Lundman, the Canadian record holder in the 35-kilometer race walk. At a bit of a newer distance. The race walk used to have the 50-kilometer event, but now at the Olympics, it's been knocked down to 35. She walked 3 hours, 11 seconds in Dedince, Slovakia, back in March. It was a 16th place finish at that A-level event for Lundman.
And the removal of that 50K from the program by World Athletics and also the IOC at the World Championships and the Olympic Games, not without controversy. Evan Dunphy was quite outspoken in terms of his disapproval of that when that was made public a few years ago. So the two events on offering individually now at the Olympic Games and the World Championships for race walkers are the 35K and the 20K. This is for senior level competitors, and that mixed team marathon relay I mentioned at the top of the program. And I think, Adam, it was really just a time thing. Not to get too into the weeds with this or controversial myself, but I think it was the time that the 50K took up in terms of TV time, precious TV time, particularly at the Olympic Games, with that event taking over 3 hours of time to complete.
It could even stretch, and often did, over 4 hours. Dunphy has the Canadian record there in 3 hours, 41 minutes and change, and we have our first entrant into the penalty box, and that is Ricky Nepomuceno. Nepomuceno was disqualified in the 10,000 meter race at the 10,000 meter championships in Guelph back in June. And very early into this race, he finds himself at the penalty box, so he's going to have to be very careful.
So athletes are allowed to do whatever they like in the penalty box. Stretching, a little limbering up, as is the case here. No sport nutrition, though, allowed in the penalty box. That is elsewhere on the track. There's the official with the stopwatch. Timing the time in the box for the athlete.
On January 1st of this year, the distances at the Olympics will change, so it's going to go to a half marathon distance in the race walk at the Olympics. Then the longer race, this won't be an Olympic event, but it will be just a marathon distance. So it will sort of split the difference between the 50K and the 35K with 42 point. I really should know the exact measurement here. 42.2 something.
Yes. And there's a reason for that. Do you know the reason that it's... Because I think the original marathon was about 25 miles.
Now, I do know this one.
Go ahead.
I believe it was the 48 Olympics, and the royal family wanted to see the end of the event, so they had to extend it to a place where the family could see it from the palace. Am I right?
Close. I think it was the London Olympics in whatever that was, 08 or 04. That was over 100 years ago. How can we remember? And you're right, but I don't think it was the end. I think it was the start. They wanted to extend the start of the race to Windsor Castle, which is on the outskirts of London. And so they needed about an extra mile, in imperial distances. And that's when the marathon stretched from about 25 miles to 26.1. And it stayed that way ever since.
So I believe you're right. That was the 1908 Games. London has hosted it 3 times, 1908, 1948, and the last time in 2012. LA's going to join that club in 2028 after hosting the 32 and 84 games. Of course, the 84 games were a victim of the boycott.
And I don't know if it's because I'm getting a little bit older, Adam, but these Olympics, the time between the Olympics, or maybe just the messing up we had during the pandemic with it pushed back a year and then only 3 years, but these Olympic years tend to come up really quick. We're 3 years now from LA 2028, and they're already starting to hype up and build up those games down in Los Angeles. I had the pleasure of doing the live announcing last year for the Pan American Track Cycling Championships at the facility that will be used for track cycling in 2028 in LA, in Carson, which is a southern suburb of Los Angeles proper, at the Velo Center in Carson. And they were already sort of making a big deal about the fact that they will be hosting track cycling there at the Velo Center. Lundman, screen left there, rolling along nicely. She has this little pop in her stride that makes her just look like she's moving along smartly on the track. Again, I hope the officials are good at counting. And making sure that Lowell Soames checks in at his finish line at half the distance of everyone else.
We just saw that current leader in the U20 category against this as well. The number 8, Tyler Wilson, a British Columbia two-time defending champion. As they're now approaching the first, now moving on to kilometer number 6, where race was 8 participants total. Part of started early this morning at 7 o'clock, the first final. They before the Canadian track and field championships, which is a belt again.
This track and field championships here at Terry Fox, at the Terry Fox facility here in Ottawa, a return after being here for several years back before the pandemic. Lundman on the left. Soames on the right. 26 minutes. Adam on the race clock, so we've probably passed the halfway mark, I'm guessing.
He came with a safe time of 1:43.40, so we're now looking. He just crossed the 6 kilometer mark for the 6,000 meters split for 26:55, so that's slightly 4:30 pace for Tyler Wilson. Certainly gives it right back to Greg is championship record here. Now we're welcome the big number 4, Rico Redondo.
Tyler Wilson leading the open race. Lundman leading the open women's race. And Lowell Soames, the lone competitor in the U20 10,000 meter race. Soames on the right side of the screen right now. One of the contingent from BC here at these championships. Rosalie Drapeau in the red. She is second right now in the women's race. Drapeau, the national champ over 20K last year. And this looks like it might be the end of the day for Ricky Nepomuceno. I've already seen him in the penalty box, and now he's been pulled off the track. So Nepomuceno will now be DQ'd in the last 2 Canadian Championship races.
Is there an appeal possibility with that, Adam? If you can you make a case for yourself while you're standing there in the penalty box? as Nepacino is, or seemed to be doing there with the officials, but he seemed to be having none of it.
So his day is done. Olivia Lundman through 6 kilometers now on the women's side.
One thing I've noticed, Adam, is that the race walkers don't make use of, at least visually from what I've seen, many of them, the super shoes. They tend to wear more traditional sort of racing or racing flat type of shoes. The new super shoes more specifically designed from an engineering perspective for running. And as you had talked about, Adam, when you described the technique earlier, the one huge difference between race walking and running is you have to have one foot in contact with the ground at all times when you are race walking. There could be no lifting, whereas, of course, in running, you spend time in the air and you come back down, and that's where the foam on the super shoes and the carbon fiber plates come into play much more so. There isn't that sort of vertical lift and then impact with the ground in race walking.
33 laps to go for the leader in the men's 20,000 meter race, Tyler Wilson.
It was a great head-on shot we just saw on the back straightaway with Wilson, Soames, and Lundman all within 100 meters of one another going down the back straightaway. And the nuance of contrast of each athlete's style. This is Soames on the right, Lundman on the left. Now on the home straightaway. And here comes Wilson. And he, as I mentioned earlier, uses a much more upright, more sort of rigid form and technique.
Only less than 7 laps remaining for the U20 athletes.
Babenko coming through on the lap for him. Check of the watch.
Londman through about 7,000 meters now. Lundman, Wilson, and Soames, all members of the UBC Thunderbirds team, coached by Evan Dunphy.
And remind me, Adam, does UBC, the Thunderbirds, collegiately, do they compete in the NAIA?
They are an NAIA school, and
right.
They had a great NAIA championships this year.
And that is the one advantage to particularly those schools out west in Canada, Lower Mainland, like UBC. They can compete in that NAIA NCAA division because they will have an outdoor season. Collegiately, everyone else in Canada, land-based collegiate teams, we only have an indoor season.
And that was the NAIA champion, Olivia Lundman, The NAIA was a 5,000 meter race. She won at a time of 22:22.79. In both the men's and women's Thunderbird sides, took home the NAIA track and field title in May. Trinity Western University, also out in BC, going to be joining the NAIA in the fall. And there are your senior race leaders. On the left, Lundman. On the right, Wilson.
Wilson and Lundman kind of coming together here. Wilson about to lap Lundman.
Wilson finished second at the NAIA Championships. His 5,000 meter time, 20:49.23. Was also second to Dunphy at the BC Championships. That was a 10,000 meter race. Dunphy won that 39:02.29. Wilson threw in 43:44.96. Wilson, a 23-year-old.
Again, great conditions here in Ottawa this morning. Barely a puff of breeze. You can see those flags just kind of fluttering on the infield. As the sun has come up, it's probably warmed up a bit, but still quite cool and low humidity. I'm sure, Adam, much better to do this today than earlier in the week when we arrived here on Monday. I think we peaked out at about 35 degrees Celsius. It was searing hot with crazy humidity.
The weather, for the most part, has cooperated so far here through these championships. Had ideal conditions last night for the 100-meter finals, and what exciting 100-meter finals they were. On the men's side, Dwayne Asamoah winning his first national title over that distance. His first medal, in fact, over that distance. Aaron Brown finishing in the silver medal position. On the women's side, Audrey Leduc defending her Canadian Championship crown. Of course, she is now Canada's fastest woman of all time, with the national record that she has lowered to 10.94. So exciting things in Canadian sprinting right now.
Leduc, of course, pushed to the finish line last night and also pushed for that Canadian record by Sade McCreath. McCreath in second to Leduc last night. And that women's possible 4x1 team just increases in strength and possibilities as these women in the 100 meters really break through new barriers. The depth of the field is impressive. That men's win by Asamoah, not to take anything away from him, he has been a finalist, I think, on 3 or 4 occasions, Adam, never on the podium, but always lurking just off of the podium with the win last night, but it didn't come without controversy. Jerome Blake disqualified for a false start in the semifinals and ran a super fast time in that semifinal round, and he is Canada's fastest man this year. And we didn't see him in the finals, which was unfortunate. But Asamoah, the winner, and he was, I think, very emotional about that. When you come to this national championship, Adam, as Dwayne Asamoah has and been to the final 3 or 4 times and been just off the podium several times, to come here and finally win it after close to an 8 or 9 year stretch of time is a big emotional victory for an athlete like Azamoda.
Should be about 8,400 meters there for Wilson, leading the men's race. There is Lundman leading the women's race.
Just to put things in perspective in terms of the pace that these top race walkers are moving at, they are going along, traveling along the track faster than most recreational runners, like weekend sort of warrior runners who are running 10K races or half marathons on the road. It's hard to tell with them out there solo on the track, but that is the speed that they're moving at. Lundman going to the bottle there on the back straightaway. 40 minutes in, and that's about the time when you want to start to think about replenishing those glucose stores, as I was talking about. You don't want to drain down the gas tank too low.
When you get to the World Championship and Olympic races, you will see the competitors put down sub 4 minute kilometers when they really get motoring. Soames going to have 2 laps left to go as he crosses the line here. Soames, the only competitor in the U20 10,000 meters, looking for his 3rd U20 Canadian title. He won the 10K back in 2022 and the 10,000 meters 2 years ago in Montreal.
I recall back to that time in Montreal. I can't remember. Did we have it on the road? We had a little 1 kilometer loop out on the road just outside of the Claude Robillard Athletics Complex.
Soames to the flyby, grabs a drink at the table. As he's got about 600 meters left to go. Excuse me, that was Wilson grabbing a drink. This is Soames now with about 500 meters left to go.
Left of your screen, penultimate time down the home straightaway for the youngster, Lowell Soames. This will be a welcome sign. He will hear the bell here and start to crank it up, but always religious with the wristwatch time check. Less than a lap to go at him now for the potential junior U20 Canadian champion.
Soames was the NAIA champion for UBC back in May. And he's about 200 meters away from adding another Canadian U20 crown to his resume. Picked up a BC title at the beginning of July. That came over this same distance, 10,000 meters. 43-40-14 there to win that. This will be outside of that, but it won't matter to him as he is going to pick up his third U20 Canadian crown in Montreal in 2025. Soames, the winner in the U20 race.
Congratulations to Lowell Soames. 44-22, as you had mentioned, Adam, the winning time. And that's always a relief, I'm told, when you can break from that lockdown, locked-in technique that you have to use in the race walk. So Soames will probably stick around and cheer on his club mates and provincial teammates who are competing in the longer race here.
And there is one of his teammates, Tyler Wilson, still leading things in the 20,000 meters.
Wilson checking in at the water and nutrition stop on the back straightaway. Speaking of endurance races, Adam, tomorrow, Sunday here in Ottawa, there will be the Ironman Canada Triathlon going on. Nearly 3,000 triathletes here in the nation's capital for that, from all over Canada, the U.S., and even further abroad. Split screen with a focus on Lundman on the left. You're far more of an expert than I am in this, Adam, but focusing in on Lundman, you know, watching her technique, and it is very individual, athlete to athlete. She has a sort of a natural bit of, in her gait, in her race walking gait, a bit of a pop to it where I could see how, and I'm not an expert, but I could see how an official would look at that and think, oh, maybe she's lifting a little bit.
It would be almost impossible not to lift at all. So sometimes you might see a split screen, or excuse me, a screen grab of a race walk competition and look and see that both feet are off the ground. But that's not the standard. The standard is to the human eye. And these officials eagle-eyed, keeping an eye on the form. Again, 2 rules in race walk. 1 foot to the eye, always has to be in contact with the ground. And the front leg always has to be locked. And Lundman tends to get her cards for knee bending. Well, that'll be where her focus is now, and keeping her form clean. We have seen a couple of cautions out to Lundman. Not sure if we've had an official warning yet, though.
Yeah, we're looking on, we have a camera dedicated to the official board, and we see the 4 for Nepomuceno, and of course he's out of the race. I recall a lengthy back and forth on Twitter or X a few years ago between myself, several other aficionados of track and field and race walking, Evan Dunphy and Tim Barrett, and we were sharing, or Tim Barrett was sharing photos and slow motion video of a couple of race walkers who were like elite level, world class level race walkers who were lifting, and you could clearly see that they had both feet off of the ground. But as you had said, Adam, officials are just using the naked eye to make that call. They're not using slow motion instant replay.
I don't know if you ever watched the show Malcolm in the Middle, but
No.
there was an episode where Hal, the father, gets really, really into race walk, but there's one guy he cannot beat, and it's starting to frustrate him. So he ends up videotaping him walking, and he pauses it, and he sees that this competitor has both feet off the ground. Now, it's a good plot line, but officially, that really wouldn't help Hal out in this situation because, again, he's using video replay. It's got to be to the human eye. Great show, by the way. If you're looking for something to binge, highly recommend that.
Okay.
And that father, Hal, played by Bryan Cranston, which made it difficult for me when I started watching Breaking Bad to forget about his character there. But give it a couple episodes and you will certainly buy him as a ruthless drug lord. Again, that's in Breaking Bad, not in Malcolm in the Middle.
I'll have to check out Malcolm in the Middle. Thanks for that reco. I'm currently in, not really binge, but I've been working my way through all Seinfeld episodes in a long distance rewatching of them all. I think I'm on season 5.
I don't recall any race walk storylines from Seinfeld, but it's been a while, so maybe I'm just forgetting something.
Well, I could see how Kramer, just knowing his quirky character, I could see how Kramer could really get into race walking. He got into sort of strange, quirky things like that, so I could see him riffing on the nuances of race walking with Jerry, George, and Elaine at some point.
Drink there for Babenko, the Masters athlete. Again, countless Masters Canadian records to his name. And I say countless because prior to coming on, I tried to count them, but there are so many that I lost count. So I did try that Control F on the Masters records, and it returned 27 results.
Well, race walking, or just walking in general, is a much underrated, undervalued physical activity. It doesn't have the sort of the impact characteristics of running, and utilizing just basic walking or higher level race walking technique as a fitness regime for older athletes is not a bad idea. If you're suffering from knee issues, hip issues, back issues, race walking or just general walking is something that you might want to consider.
So that last kilometer split for Lundman, 4:46. And she continues to lead the women's race. Rosalie Drapeau, the other competitor. Drapeau, the national champion in the 20K last year. And Tyler Wilson leading the men's race. So BC looking for the sweep here after Lowell Soames picked up the win in the 10,000 meter U20 race.
just coming up to an hour of this. Thanks everyone for tuning in to watch. And this is where, as I was talking about the hydration and sport nutrition component of this, you can kind of fake this for up to an hour. But then after this point is where, if it's warmer, you will need to start to rehydrate. Or if you've not done it up until this point, you might be getting down on your hydration levels, and then the sport nutrition, that glucose level in the blood will start to trail off a little bit. So it starts to become super important beyond roughly this point in the race. And if you've not stayed on top of that up until this point, you might be running into some cramping issues or other problems physiologically past the 1 hour mark.
Wilson's PB over 20,000 meters is 1:37.21. He clocked that back in 2023. Form still looking very strong on Wilson. There are race walkers who make it look easy, and Tyler Wilson is certainly one of those. Very clean form, very efficient.
Indeed, Adam, he is very smooth, does not use a lot of that sort of counter rotation of the hips as you see some of the other athletes do. See a lot of more of that with Rosalie Drapeau as she comes through on a lap. Enrico Ranella just moving along with Drapeau. Back on Tyler Wilson. He is very smooth there. He's loosening up the arms a little bit as he goes down the back straightaway.
A couple of PBs in 2025 for Wilson. His performance at the NAIAs in the 5,000 meters, 20:49.23. So that was a new best for him. Then last month, he walked 43:44.96 in the 10,000 meters. And that was at the BC Championships, where he finished second to Dunphy. Great look there at the footwork from Wilson.
Tyler Wilson, one more time, as he's now approaching the 13-kilometer mark, so slowly, very steady pace for him.
And again, these are not the super shoes that you see the runners using. This is a more classic running training shoe or racing flat that you see the race walkers utilizing. I've run in some of those super shoes, Adam, and I don't know if you've run in them. They feel like you're gonna like roll an ankle. They are very unstable.
Now, a few of these athletes are using these super shoes. You've got Tyler Wilson, Olivia Lundman taking advantage of that technology. Also, Lowell Soames, who we just saw win the 10,000 meter race. Last kilometer split for Lundman, leading the women's race, 4:49. Wilson does wear super shoes sometimes. Not sure if he's got them on today.
Well, the thing that's characteristic of the super shoes is the stack at the heel height. It is substantially taller at the heel than traditional running shoes. or traditional trainers or racing shoes had been. And I'm just looking at those shoes when we had that close-up of Wilson. They seem to be kind of normal in that regard.
So Tyler Wilson now approaching the first 1 hour race here for the current leader of the competition.
Almost exactly an hour into this.
Now switch to the nation's capital of the elite once the ladies mark here with a new personal best championship record. Now we're welcoming the host of the third position. Owen Sullivan with bid number 6. Again, he's being followed closely by Rico Bradella. Both athletes of Ontario. Rosalie Capote also trying to stay in contact with Rico here as they obviously pass the halfway mark.
So that is Dmitry Babenko. We're focusing on split screen on the left. Second place to Wilson, our leader on the right. This is in the 20K or 20,000 meter. 20,000 meter sounds like a long, long way out of when you say that. 20K sounds more palatable.
That is 50 laps around the track sound for that 20,000.
Good grief. Of course, the one advantage of doing this on the track is it's flat. There's no hills.
At the World Championships and Olympic Games, it is on a road course. With an absolutely breathtaking road course in Paris, with the athletes racing with the Eiffel Tower in their sightlines.
I think every event sort of of an endurance nature, the marathon, the bike road race, the triathlon, the race walks, had to have the Eiffel Tower in almost every camera shot, at least what I was watching on the feed that I was seeing.
I was lucky enough to attend the 35K race in Paris, and what really stands out to me, aside from just how beautiful the course was, the fan support. Part of the course was ticketed, but there was a large part that was free, so the public could just come up and watch. And I had never seen such a big crowd for race walk, and it was so big that you actually couldn't see the athletes before they turned the corner, but you knew they were coming just because you could hear the roar of the crowd.
Well, I heard lots of reports of that, and it was great to see in Paris. Of course, I was watching on TV, and many were saying this was the first sort of return to normal, of the Olympic Games after the disruption of the pandemic. Tokyo, of course, no fans in the stadium and limited on the outdoor venues. And even in Rio, somewhat sort of venues were not sold out for ticketed seats. Long travel to get to South America. Paris, a return to normal, and we really hadn't had crowds like that for outdoor venues since London in 2012 and packed stadiums like we saw in London in 2012.
I have to correct myself. I said that was the 35K race in Paris. It was the 20K from the race walking program in Paris, the 20K, and then the mixed relay in Londman, who just came through the screen, a member of that Canadian mixed relay team with Evan Dunphy. And they finished 20th.
Let's welcome the current occupants of the third and fourth position, both athletes of Ontario.
Rosalie Drapeau second in the women's race. There is the leader, Lundman. On the left, the leader in the men's race, Tyler Wilson. On the right, both of them members collegiately of the UBC Thunderbirds.
Adam, you know this, that historically race walking, countries around the world, this isn't right now, but over the course of time, we don't really get a sense for it here in Canada or North America, but the Latin American countries, the nearest would be Mexico, take race walking very seriously, and some of the greats of all time have come from Latin American countries and Eastern European countries. They take this very, very seriously. I know it's looked upon as a bit of a sideline in some countries in Europe, more Western European countries, Canada and the U.S., but in those Latin American countries and Eastern European countries, their top race walkers are revered athletes.
Well, UBC is going to have to refresh their top race walkers soon, as both Wilson and Lundman have just graduated. However, the future is looking bright as they have Lowell Soames in the mix as well, and he is the Canadian champion in the U20 ranks this year in the 10,000 meters. He wrapped up his race about 15 minutes ago. So I hope Evan Dunphy, who coaches that UBC team, is a decent recruiter.
Well, Evan's been a great proponent of this particular event, very outspoken about it and his passion for race walking. So no doubt if you want to take it to the next level, you would be wise to head west and see what you can do at UBC. Lundman checking the watch again, coming through on the lap, 106.33. So we've got roughly, for Wilson, about 30 plus minutes to go in terms of his race. A little bit longer for Lundman.
We have a busy day coming up. Day 4 of the Canadian Track and Field Championships presented by Bell. Early start with the race walk finals. They got underway at 7. And Olivia Lundman through 14K at 106.33. So that's going to put her on a 135.04 pace. And for Wilson, he's coming up to the 15-kilometer mark.
So knocking out those kilometers. Yes, Adam, we got a full day. Some of the highlights later on today, the conclusion of the U20 and the senior women's heptathlon. They have the long jump, the javelin throw, and the 800 meters to wrap things up. Hurdles, semifinals and finals for all sprint hurdles events. The 800 meter finals, and we will see in that men's 800 meter final, the great Marco Aerope did something super interesting in the semifinals yesterday. It'll be interesting to see what he does in the final. Of course, the win important for Aerope, very proud Canadian to come back home and win a Canadian championship, but from a performance level, it'll be interesting to see what kind of a time he can lay down. 1,500 meter semifinals also on the docket today.
So through 15 kilometers, Wilson was 1:07:37. That puts him on pace to finish at just over 90 minutes here in this 20,000 meters.
Well, that might put him beneath the championship record, which he himself holds. Adam, we'll keep an eye on that. We'll note that it's 1:37:21. That is the standing championship record.
Would also be a big PB for Wilson. Right now his 20,000 PB sits at 1:37:21. That was from 2 years ago.
There's Wilson lapping Lundman, two collegiate and club teammates.
Just over 4,000 meters left in fourth. Great pace for both Tyler and Olivia Londman. Now, Rico right now has moved away from Marceline Lapo, moving into fourth position. Obviously, not too far from Owen Sullivan, currently sitting in third. Dimitri Maleko, lead number 7.
What was that time you said Lundman was potentially on pace for, Adam?
Lundman right around 1:35:04 pace when we got her split at 14,000 meters.
Well, that potentially could be a Canadian record if your calculations, an outright Canadian record for 20K. I believe I mentioned previously that record is held by Rachel Seaman, who, before Lundman came on the scene, was Canada's best women's race walker at all distances for a number of years. 1:38:48 is that standing Canadian record. Now, we're not 100% sure, Adam, if that was done on the track or the road. We'll need to do some more nerding out on the stats and the data to sort that out.
Not only that, we're looking at the Canadian record as well, set 50 years ago by Rachel Seaman. 1:38:48, so Olivia really, of course, was known for her sub 1:42, but also for the new Canadian
Here, Stadium
on the track,
live announcer Javier Clavello just going over those record details that I was just talking about. Kudos to the team at Athletics Canada. They have turned this track, the Terry Fox Athletics facility, into a great home for us for these 5 days of action here. It doesn't normally look like this, with all the tents and the marquees and the banners and the sponsor signboards. Last night it was packed. Stadium completely full. The secondary stands you can see sprinkled around the track completely full.
Lundman leading the women's race, Wilson the men's race. 20,000 meters, the distance they're going at these Canadian Championships. And there is a warning for Lundman, so or she has 3 warnings, I should say, so she is into the penalty box. She will be there for 2 minutes, and then she will have to be very careful with her form, as 1 more warning will result in a disqualification. Saw her get DQ'd earlier this year in Guelph, so she is not looking for a repeat of that here today.
Unfortunate for Lundman, this may put that record that I was talking about previously, the outright Canadian record, in jeopardy, because she will lose essentially 2 minutes of time, cooling her heels literally here in the penalty box. Clock running. There's the official with the stopwatch in her hand. And I'm sure those are anxious moments, Adam, for an athlete. You're used to driving yourself forward and trying to squeeze out every ounce of energy to get to the finish line as quickly as possible. These 2 minutes will take forever if you're just standing there stationary.
Tyler Wilson coming by the penalty box now. Lundman watches him go by.
I wonder if Lundman stops her watch or just lets the watch run in terms of her focus on what her splits were or what her time is.
I didn't see her go to it coming out of the penalty box, so looks, at least to me, that she just lets it run.
That was at 4:36, clocking last kilometer for Tyler Wilson, with just over 7 laps remaining, less than 3 kilometers to go for the 2-time defending champion.
It should be about 17,000 meters now for Tyler Wilson, who has a healthy lead in the men's race. It's at about 1:30.22 pace. And again, that would knock quite a bit of time off of his personal best. Knock about 7 minutes off of it, in fact.
That is impressive race walking from the leader here en route to potential Canadian championships. Now, Lundman needs to be, as you had said, Adam, very careful here and focus on the form. One more warning. She has 3. Spent 2 minutes in the penalty box. One more warning, and she's possibly out of the race. The same fate, as you had said earlier, that befell her at Alumni Stadium at the 10,000 meter Canadian Championships back in June.
That is the Inferno race, one of the stops on the National Track and Field Tour. And the final stop coming up next week, La Classique in Montreal, and ACTV will have full coverage of that event. And later this month, the next generation of Canadian stars takes center stage. We've got the Legion Championships from Calgary right here on ACTV.
And viewers will have the dulcet tones of you hosting those broadcasts. And the awesome and amazing Kate Van Buskirk along for expert commentary. Kate taking the morning off. I think she's going for a long run. At least that's what she told us she was doing. She will be back. Don't worry, viewers. KVB will be back with us for the main part of the program that gets underway at 10 o'clock local time here in Ottawa.
Of course, she is a former Olympian herself in the 5,000 meters. Has a couple of Canadian titles to her name as well. They came in the 1,500 meters, but she is making the switch now to the marathons and told us she wants to get 90 miles in this week, which would be just a superb month for me. I can't process running 90 miles in a week. Now, part of that is I'm not good at miles. Just, of course, she spent so much time in the States running for Duke, so she goes by the imperial system sometimes, and it's just me trying to convert that to kilometers when she mentions that.
Well, we're honored to share the commentary booth with Kate and humbled by her athletic prowess that rolls on. Indeed, she is planning on a fall marathon, not sure where, hoping to qualify for Boston in the elite division for next year. Rosalie Drapeau, screen left, second to Lundman in this senior and elite 20,000 meter championship. She rolls on through on the lap. Back to Wilson. He's coming through on his lap. Looks like 5 to go now. We're into the single digits, Adam.
Here clocking in under 4 minutes and 40 seconds each kilometer for Tyler Wilson. And that will give him a very solid performance. He was at sub 4:30 in the first half of the race. That was obviously very impressive. He has sustained that.
And we are getting word that Evan Dunphy is watching and has passed along that some of these record times that we've been talking about are somewhat suspect. So thank you, Evan, for passing on that vital information to us. Evan over in Europe at his training base over there. Wilson, screen left. Still rolling along down the back straightaway, looking smooth.
Last check, it was Babenko holding down second place on the men's side. Babenko, dozens of Masters race walking Canadian records to his name.
Owen Sullivan just through the screen, and Enrico Ranella as well. Back to Wilson, just lapping Rosalie Drapeau.
Seen Ricky Nepomuceno disqualified after picking up 4 warnings in this race, so another championship race that did not go the way Nepomuceno would have liked. Well, the same thing, unfortunately for him, in Guelph at the 10,000 meter championships.
So and that should have been 4 to go for Wilson. So 1,600 meters, less than a mile in old money to the finish line for Wilson.
Lundman on 3 warnings, so her goal now is just to make sure that her form is impeccable, because 1 more warning will result in a DQ.
So Wilson going to an energy gel with less than a mile to go, and they've done some research on this. This was shared along to me by Dr. Trent Stellingworth, exercise physiologist who consults with Athletics Canada. They've done some research on this, and if you put a little bit of sweetness into your mouth late in a race, it tricks the body into a burst of adrenaline and freeing up more glucose in the body. You'll never process that sugar or that glucose that's going in the sport gel or the energy gel in time to get to the body. But the sweetness in the mouth, there's sensors in the back of your mouth that trick the body into releasing more glucose into the blood late in a marathon race or an event like this in an hour and a half, 90-minute plus duration. So that's possibly the reason that Wilson has gone to an energy gel so late in the race here.
22 years of age, also has competed at various national championships here. We welcome with 6 laps remaining unofficially for the current leader of the women's competition, 2024 Olympian and 2-time Olympic champion, Londman.
If my calculations are right, Adam, this will be the final kilometer marker for Wilson on the back straightaway when he gets to the 200-meter mark. It should be exactly 1K to go for him from that point. Maybe one last swig of the sport nutrition or some water.
His PB over 20,000 meters, 1:37.21. And Wilson poised to crush that here at these championships.
Well, they couldn't ask for better weather conditions here. Absolutely perfect. Mid-teens air temperature, 0 wind. Custom made for record breaking in any kind of endurance sports event here.
2 laps remaining for Wilson.
6 minutes with 2 laps remaining.
On 27 and a bit of change on the clock for Wilson. And he'll have the benefit of doing a little Pac-Man work here, spurred on to catch those. He's lapping ahead of him.
This group 20,000 meter. Let's welcome once more Olivia Lundman. She will have, according to my calculations here, 5 laps remaining. She's approaching the 18-kilometer mark.
Lundman coming up to the 18-kilometer mark here.
So 2K to go for Lundman.
Just over 128 for her.
Just over 600 meters to go now for Wilson. He passes Sullivan and Ranella just at that 200-meter checkpoint down the back straightaway.
Wilson already has a pair of national titles to his name. 20K championship back last year in the 20,000 meter championship back in 2023.
Now this will be a welcome sound, Adam, when we hear it. Most particularly a welcome sound for Wilson when he comes up with 1 lap to go. There it is. The bell.
1 lap left to go for Tyler Wilson in this men's 20,000 meter race walk final. His personal best, 1:37.21.
Wow. He is going to absolutely annihilate that personal best here, Adam. And he looks great going down the back straightaway, really starting to open it up right now. Needs to still think about form. Straight leg, contact with the ground. And I can see him opening it up as he goes on down that back straightaway one last time. Just over 200 meters left to another Canadian championship.
Just has to ensure everything remains clean in this final 200 meters.
Let's welcome one more time here as he enters. He's about to go around the bend one last time here at the Terry Fox Athletic Facility here in Ottawa. Tyler Wilson of British Columbia.
Wilson around the corner for the final time. He's into the home straight away. He was second at the NAIA's, second at the BC Championships, but at the Canadian Championships, he's going to be on top of the podium, and he is going to do it in style by obliterating his personal best. Tyler Wilson takes the title. Looked to be just under 1:31. So whatever it is corrected to, it is going to be a big improvement on that 1:37.21 personal best that he came into this final with. It is 1:30.57 for Wilson.
Good grief. That is a 7-minute personal best for Tyler Wilson. They're calling it a championship record, but again, we've been advised that some of these records are a little suspect, so we will just congratulate him on the massive personal best and the Canadian Championship. That's what is most important and was on the line here today for Tyler Wilson. Hat off. And another Canadian Championship for young Tyler Wilson.
Can make it 3 now for him. And in the women's race, the leader, Olivia Lundman, just under 3 laps left to go now for her, I believe. So as she crosses the 200-meter start here, this is going to be kilometer 19. She is on 3 warnings, so it is imperative that she keeps her form clean.
There's Londman coming up on Drapeau and will lap her competitor another time.
Babenko second right now in the men's race. And he has got just under 2 laps left to go.
So now less than 1K, the final kilometer now for Olivia Lundman. Just going by that warning board just to their left as they come off the bend into the home straightaway.
So she's coming up to 2 laps left to go. Babenko has about 600 meters left to go. He's looking to lock down the silver medal here in 2025. And that is Sullivan, who is into the penalty box now. So he will have to wait 2 minutes. So look at the watch by Babenko. There was no 20,000 meter racewalk masters records listed. If there were, though, I'd have to assume that Dmitry Babenko's name would be all over them as well.
Well, Babenko keeps breaking through barriers at the Masters level. Maybe they can create a record for him. A little communication there with the officials, I think just acknowledging.
To correct myself, it might be 2 laps now left for Babenko.
I think it was. I think I saw the official, Adam, with 2 fingers out there for Dmitry as he came by, and he was just acknowledging to the officials that indeed 2 to go.
It's no easy feat for these officials when you have these combined races to keep track of the laps for every competitor. But they're doing an excellent job here, as they always do up here in Canada.
Well, we had the race within the race, too. We had the U20 race going on with young Lowell Soames, and he was going half the distance. So initially the countdown clock had his lap count on the board.
So Sullivan out of the penalty box. Lundman onto her bell lap. Babenko, just over 500 meters left to go.
Just under 300 meters race left for Olivia Lundman. Again, that 1 hour 38 minute 48 second national record set by Rachel Seaman 50 years ago will go down today. Again, to be confirmed without official time, just 250 meters remaining for Olivia Lundman.
Lundman just outside of 200 meters left to go. Just has to ensure that her form stays legal. She is on 3 warnings. So no doubt Lundman thinking very intently right now on keeping 1 foot on the ground and that front knee locked.
Here she comes around the bend one more time, of course, to break the new Canadian record in race walk. Your 2024 Olympia, 22 years of age, Olivia Lundman of British Columbia.
Even after spending 2 minutes in the penalty box, Lundman is going to crush her PB in 20,000 meters. It was 1:42.11 coming in. And she's going to take about 4.5 minutes off of that here at the championships. Olivia Lundman picks up another national title. This one coming over 20,000 meters. And she comes through in 1:37.40.
Congratulations to Olivia Lundman. Redemption, Adam, from what we were talking about with that DQ at Alumni Stadium at the Inferno in Guelph back in June in the 10,000 meter championships. National flag for Lundman. And again, and also one for Wilson, the 2 Canadian champions. This is the bell for Dmitry Babenko. Checks the watch one last time. That's the most beautiful sound to a distance runner, race walker in these long races, the sound of the bell. As we've been advised, these Canadian records somewhat suspect in terms of, I'm guessing, Adam, whether or not they'd been set on the track or the road, but we'll call it a massive personal best for Olivia Lundman. And if you take 2 minutes off of that she spent in the penalty box, it would drop down to 1:35.40.
Well, I can confirm now, Steve, that 1:37.40 from Lundman is the new Canadian record for the 20,000-meter race walk. It betters Rachel Seaman's 1:38.48.05 that she walked back in 2010. So a national championship and a new Canadian record for Lundman. Here is Dmitry Babenko into his final lap.
The ageless Dmitry Babenko. And looking good. Look at him rocking and rolling as he comes into the home straightaway one final time.
Babenko, strong form here through to the end. And Babenko will pick up the silver medal. Babenko and Lundman celebrate. A Canadian title and a new national record always has to feel good, but perhaps a little extra special for Lundman after getting DQ'd at the 10,000-meter race walk championships in Guelph earlier this year.
Well, that must have been extraordinarily frustrating to travel all the way back from BC to Ontario to go after that title and maybe another record, and then have to be DQ'd. But kudos to Olivia Lundman for persistency and sticking with it, coming back here and getting this 20,000-meter title and record.
Bell lap for Rosalie Drapeau.
So already on the course here for the last lap, the two remaining medals that we will have from this 20,000-meter race walk final. Rico Regnella of Etobicoke, Ontario.
Drapeau, the national champion last year, over 20K.
Now on the home stretch here, Owen Sullivan currently fourth. He's approaching just over 1 lap remaining for his athlete who's walked for the most part in third position. Obviously had some challenges, and he's determined to cross the finish line and finish the 20,000-meter walk race walk.
Final 200 meters for Drapeau.
Race walk here from Ontario. Let's welcome Enrico Regnella of Etobicoke.
Drapeau really starting to open it up here, but again, as you had mentioned, Adam, you need to be extra cautious in these final pushes to the finish line to maintain form.
Drapeau's form holding up well. She is into the final meters of this 20,000-meter race. And Rosalie Drapeau is going to pick up the silver medal here in 2025. A hug between Drapeau and Lundman. Now a chance for Drapeau to catch her breath after 50 laps of the track.
Rosalie Drapeau's official time is 1:44:13.5. Donc, félicitations Rosalie. Belle élimination de 1:46 à 1h44:13 pour la médaille d'argent ici au 20 000 mètres match cheval.
Hat in hand, as is a bottle here for Owen Sullivan.
Unfortunately, we missed the finish of Enrico Ranella. He was in at 1:43.57, and Sullivan coming down the home straightaway now.
He will complete the field here of athletes contesting the 20,000-meter race walk. Owen Sullivan of Toronto.
We have a very special guest in the booth now. Woman who just won another Canadian championship and set a new Canadian record, Olivia Lundman. Do you have any breath left right now, Olivia?
I've got a bit. I had a couple minutes to catch my breath.
Well, excellent. Well, so glad that after catching your breath that you were able to swing by here. How are you feeling right now? Another national championship and a new national record over 20,000 meters.
Yeah, I'm really pleased. I was going into today not knowing exactly how it was going to go. This is my first 20K all season. I've been focused on the 35K and some shorter stuff, and so this was really kind of a primer and a fitness test to see how I'm doing in the lead up to Tokyo. So I'll be racing a 35K next month, and so yeah, just wanted to see where the fitness was at, and yeah, felt really comfortable and felt like I had a lot left in the tank even at the end, so really happy with where my fitness is going into Tokyo.
You did have 3 warnings. You did spend the 2 minutes in the penalty box. How much focus coming out of the penalty box becomes just on not so much the speed, but just making sure the form stays intact?
Yeah, quite a bit. I definitely felt like I was holding myself back at the end there. Was really just focusing on form, because at that point I knew that I could still finish and get a okay time, and so I pulled back a bit to focus on the form, and then so I felt like I still could have pushed harder, but at that point I wanted to finish the race. I didn't want to get disqualified, and so I chose to focus on my form, so pulled back a bit.
Do you get any extra confidence knowing that despite having to spend the 2 minutes in the penalty box, you take down the 20,000 meter Canadian record?
Definitely. I mean, part of me is still a bit disappointed that I couldn't have, gotten 2 minutes faster on my time, because I know I definitely have the capability of walking in the 1:35s, but still pleased to have been able to pull off the record even with the 2-minute penalty. And yeah, there's still more races to go.
And now heading over to Europe, I believe it's St. Moritz to train in the lead up to the World Athletics Championships in September. When are you hopping on a plane?
Tomorrow.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yes, I leave for Switzerland tomorrow. Evan's already there, so I'll be joining him and some other international race walkers, and we'll be training there for a month before heading to Japan.
He was watching. He was sending us
I'm
notes
sure
and
he was.
tips the entire time. So he, of course, is very happy to see you come through with the victory here and in the new Canadian record time.
Shoes. We were talking about the shoes. We see some of the race walkers wearing the super shoes, some not wearing the super shoes. What is your shoe choice?
So I am a super shoe person. I've been wearing them for a while. Initially, I started wearing them because my toes are hyper flexible, and so I can't push off with them. And so I've always liked the shoe that's stiff in the forefoot for the roll off. And so, started finding ones with carbon plates because they were nice and stiff. And then, it seems like the race walk community's kind of shifted towards that. And, I mean, it's not the same benefit as runners because you're not landing and spraying off. I mean, we don't want to be bouncy. It's the opposite of what we want. But I think that they help for sure. Just help with a bit of energy of your foot's not having to push off. It kind of does that motion for you. So I know a lot of race walkers have moved towards that. So I wear the Saucony Endorphin Elites. I know a lot of race walkers will wear Asics. Some will wear Puma, Adidas. There's lots out there, but yeah, everyone's kind of personal when it comes to shoe preference.
Talk to us about the conditions. They look to be, at least from what we saw, temperature-wise, almost optimal and zero wind. Was that helpful for you today?
Yeah, I found that the conditions were great. I mean, personally, I'm someone that likes racing in as cold as possible because I overheat pretty easily. But I found that like today, I didn't even need to be like dumping water over my head or anything. I found that it was quite comfortable. Yeah, not much of a breeze, but the temperature was really nice. But it's not quite going to be like that in Tokyo, so I'll have to definitely do some heat preparation for that.
Olivia, congratulations on another Canadian title, a new national record, and best of luck at the upcoming World Athletics Championships.
Thank you so much.